Well, hello,
Hi.
LeAnne.
Yes.
How do you pronounce it in South?
LeAnne.
LeAnne.
LeAnne Marie.
That sounds very southern.
It's it's Missouri Southern, so it's like slow drawl. I was
Yeah.
just there and I realized I'm saying y'all a lot. And it's coming back.
Oh yeah, I love that. I used to romanticize it a lot
Really?
because I'm not from,
That's
from
so
America.
cute. Yeah. And in college, they got so mad at me because I was a communications major
Yeah.
that when I would give a speech, they would mark me down a grade if I had an accent so that I would learn not to sound Southern.
Do you still have some accent?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. It comes out. It probably will come out today because I was just in Missouri for a while. And when I'm there, I
Yeah.
find that
Back to your
yeah, it just kind of slowly slips out. You'll hear it. Yeah.
beautiful. How do you feel being here today? Have you ever thought that you one day will be telling your story on camera?
No, no, it's really, I feel honored to be here. And it's exciting because I never thought I would be here. Because when you're in the middle of it all, the hard stuff, you never realize that you're going to get to the other side. You hope you will, maybe you look towards it, but
Yeah.
then when you get there, you're like, oh, wow, I made it. Okay. So it's really cool.
Okay, so where do we start? We probably should start from just like you said, very breaking point, the moment when it feels like everything is falling apart and you don't really see going through this and you don't feel like you can win. And how would you name the chapter of that life?
Ooh,
That chapter of your life. If you could name it, how would you name it?
it's a great question. How would I name it? I used to call it the worst year of my life.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's enough.
It's right. It's selling. I kind of stopped saying that because I feel like that when you speak things into existence, they just repeat. But it definitely was the worst year of my life so far.
Let's get into that year
Okay.
right now.
All right.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I'll probably give you a little bit of background on how it started. I was married. I had 2 kids. They were 4 and 7, Sawyer and Lily, 2 girls. And we'd been married almost 10 years, and we were relatively happy, I thought. We had moved here for his career. I was a stay-at-home mom. He traveled probably 300 days a year, which was difficult, but we made it work. And then, it was ideal. It wasn't perfect. When I read my journals now, I realize I was really unhappy. But also, life does that. If you're in a relationship for 20 years, there are good times and bad. And so one night I'd made a date with him and we went out on a date. We were at a bar in Redondo Beach and he started talking and I realized that he was essentially saying we should get divorced. And I said it, I go, are you saying we should get a divorce? And it felt like it was out of the clear blue. I had no idea.
And it's been already how many years you've been married?
10.
10 years.
And we've been together 15.
Yeah.
We'd lived all over the country. And he goes, yeah, I think we should. And I picked up the glass of whiskey in front of me and threw it across the room. I was shooting for him, but I missed.
Oh.
And I just got up and I immediately started crying because I cry when I'm angry and hurt. And just marched outside. And that was the beginning of my entire life unraveling in ways I never expected or had I prepared for it all, financially or mentally or emotionally. And I walked home in the dark down the beach with no shoes because I had thrown them off in the car and was so angry. And it was the longest walk of my life. And when I got to the house, he was sitting there and I said,
Wait, so you were coming back home separately?
yeah, I
Just like awkward?
stormed out of the car, threw a fit. I was like, no.
Yeah.
I was like, go home, get the sitter.
Yeah.
And I'll be there later. And I walked upstairs and he was sitting in the chair, his chair. And I said, no. He said, what?
Yeah.
I said, no, we're not getting divorced after 10 years without any conversation about it. No.
Yeah.
And I walked downstairs and I went to bed.
But is it because you just wanted to know the reason, or you genuinely didn't want to divorce?
At the time, I generally didn't want to divorce. And I also, I was very confused because we still slept together.
Yeah.
We still hung out together.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't understand what was going on. And the reason I didn't understand is later I would learn he'd been lying to me for years. He essentially said, I'm not happy when I'm with you and the girls. The only thing that makes me happy is work, and I don't want to be here anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
all right, and what happens after?
Well, first, we just separated. I begged him to take 6 weeks and go to therapy with me. He said he would. 2 weeks in, he said, we're done.
Yeah.
And he planned to move out.
2 weeks in the therapy.
Yeah, he didn't even go to therapy. He wouldn't go with me. No, I think that knowing what I know now, I think he had been done for a long time, and he just hadn't shared it with me, which is so unfair, just tell people. But I was really blindsided, so he left, he moved out, and we were doing our best to, navigate being parents. And then something interesting happened, Ola, and I want to try to explain it because it's a wild thing to me. One day he was at the house watching the kids, and he started giving me the speech about how we should go ahead and file for divorce and get the paperwork done. But the way he said it wasn't the way he spoke. It was like somebody else had given him those words. And I was like, can we talk about it later? And I went to bed, and I could not quit thinking about it.
It's almost like someone coached him.
Yes. I was
him.
like, I've known him for 15 years. That's not how he speaks. And so the next day he brought it up again when he came to see the girls. And without meaning to, I said, what's going on? Are you about to die? Are you about to get a bunch of money you don't want me to have?
Yeah.
Are you sleeping with, that's not how I said it, sleeping with a woman named Courtney. Courtney, which was a friend of ours and like an aunt to the family. And the minute I saw his face, I knew that was it. He was sleeping with her.
How could you guess that?
I don't know. It was a bunch of little things that just started to pile up in my brain. Like, why is this happening? Why is she going out with me? Why is she took me out right after he asked me for a divorce, hoes before bros kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there was just something, I couldn't figure it out. But really, she had been essentially deciding to take my family away from me for a long time. She worked with him. He brought her in like an aunt to the kids because he thought then the kids wouldn't mind, which was insane and stupid and not true for a 12-year-old.
Look at this guy's teamwork, huh?
Yeah.
So, okay. I mean, definitely not okay, but it was, we already briefly spoke about it one time, like a couple of months when the first time I saw you. And I remember it was really, the karma got him to some extent because of how things turned out for him later on.
Yes.
With this girl.
Yeah, and I would say continues to get him to this day. He had a huge Central Park wedding in New York. It was his third wedding.
Third. Okay.
He insisted on our daughters to be in it, even though they were heartbroken by it all. And then 6 months later, she threw everything he owned in a dumpster and changed the locks.
There you go.
And he disappeared. He literally disappeared for 3 years because him leaving was the beginning of a terrible year. But that wasn't what was terrible. I don't need somebody to be okay. What was terrible was when he left and all that happened, he started sleeping on somebody's couch and disappeared. He didn't help us financially. He didn't help us mentally, physically. He didn't see the girls for years. So I went from being a stay-at-home mom to a single mom in Los Angeles who was getting no child support and who had not worked full-time in years, so I couldn't get a job. So that was what really started it to become really hard and difficult for us to figure out how to survive.
Why do you think, it's just interesting, why do you think some of men, including him, choose to disappear completely rather than face all the damage that they cause? And I know in this situation it's hard to imagine, what would you prefer him doing instead?
Yeah, that's a great
Because
question.
it's hard to imagine ending this on the good terms when drama is drama anyways.
Yeah.
So what would be the perfect way, how you wish he acted?
I've thought a lot about this. To your first question, I think women do it too, but men do it maybe more in my experience. I don't even know if that's a true fact, but that's what I've heard. I think that his mother said it perfectly to me. It's a shame you're not a good mother, or that you're a good mother,
Yeah.
and you won't just leave and dump him with the kids like he did you. And that's why he can leave, because he knows you will never leave them.
Wait, say it again. It's the shame.
It's a shame you're not a bad mother and you just ran off like he did. But he can run off because he knows you will never abandon the kids. So it gives him permission to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. He knew I was going to take care of him. He's even said to me in the last 10 years, like, thank God you were their mother.
Yeah.
Because he knew that I wouldn't leave. And so that allowed him to leave. I don't know if that's true for all men, but I do think that was true for him.
Mm-hmm.
The way I wish he'd handled it is, I wish he'd just talked to me when he was unhappy and thinking of getting divorced. It would have hurt. I don't know how I would have reacted. I had not done the work and therapy and self-care to myself at that time that I have now. But at least I would have been blindsided, and I could have made plans to like make sure we would be okay. Because it was very difficult to trust anyone, and sometimes still is, because of the way he did it. He was my best friend. I still once in a while will see something that I think he'll think is funny, and I almost grab the phone because he was my best friend. And suddenly, you don't just lose your husband and the father of your kids, but your best friend too. And it makes no sense because he was lying. If he'd just been honest, I could have slowly gotten used to it instead of going through all that emotional trauma and then also having to raise children by myself and try to be okay and try to make money. I think just be honest with people. Just tell
So
the
you
truth.
wish he was just more honest.
I do.
What do you think, were there any red flags that you should have noticed and you didn't because you just kept going on some sort of autopilot? And if there's anything you think you missed that you should have noticed?
Yes. Looking back, I should have realized that he was jealous when Courtney would talk about things, because we were friends, we'd hang out, and if she talked about guys and stuff, I'd be excited for her because I was like, oh, who's your new guy? And he was odd about it. He wasn't himself.
He was odd about Courtney having her
Relationships.
romantic life thriving.
Yeah.
Oh.
I should have recognized that him traveling, he was lonely, and that he chose travel over us all the time, and that there was probably a reason for that, which is hard.
But what if traveling wasn't a side effect? What if it was the cause?
It absolutely could be.
Because there is no bonding happening with the family.
It's
the
true.
more he is away from the family, the less he gets attached.
I agree. I ended up having a job where I traveled for a lot, but 1 year in particularly. And it's lonely, right? People think it's glamorous, but it's not. You are in hotels all the time. You don't know anyone. You sit in bars. It's lonely. You have to work really hard to keep your commitments and your relationships with people. Even my friends would be like, well, we don't ask you because you're never here. And so years later, when I had that job, I realized that had to have been hard. I think you have to have time with people to build something. I think that especially in the United States, we as families and men particularly get this burden to like build their life. That's the most important thing. And they focus so much on that. And I think he thought he was doing it for us, but it's something that helped drive a wedge between us.
Interesting. I grew up like this. My father was working a lot away from home. And there's nothing bad I can say about him, but every time when he comes back home and spends some time with us, you just sense that you're supposed to really, really like and feel comfortable around your father, but it's just not there.
Yes.
And I felt something is wrong with me because it just doesn't feel like he always felt like a little bit of a stranger.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bad I could say about him, but it was just always off that we didn't really get used to his complete presence on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I think that's absolutely true. Like I would make sure the house was clean. We had all the favorite food. We would work our entire lives around Daddy being home so that everybody could spend as much time with him as he wanted. And I think two things happened. One, he would come home and not get any downtime because we all craved being with him. And our whole lives were around that. And then he'd leave and he would be non-existent in our lives. Yeah, I agree. I would say my youngest daughter, particularly because she was a lot younger, that's affected her life in a big way of not knowing him.
Interesting. Okay. I remember you mentioned once when I spoke to you briefly before about the day when you actually realized that you can really, really change a lot and you want to do this and it's in your power. And just to set the tone for this conversation, a lot of us, when we're going through times like this, what I really lacked in my life is maybe a reliable friend, sister, or wise aunt that could tell me that when it feels in a moment that is just really, really dark place, later in life it would feel like just a dark memory, nothing more than that. So I feel like your story, by sharing your story, you're actually being this person to a lot of people, including to me. That's the feeling I got from the first time when I spoke to you. So I want you to, like, in details, describe that day when you decided to turn everything around. And I know that it wasn't a smooth way, and things were tough, and a little bit, so just share that.
Okay. Well, after he left, I worked really hard to find jobs everywhere that I could to make enough money to keep us here because I felt like we had a support system of friends and people here, and we did. But it was difficult. I owned a fitness studio that was a pole dancing fitness studio, and I used to always say, I won't let him take my happiness away. But I also didn't do the things I needed to do to take care of myself, and so I didn't get to that day right away. I spent a lot of time getting there. I dated. I ended up going to Las Vegas to be a dancer, an exotic dancer to pay the bills, which was a whole conversation in and of itself. I did all these things, and I was really...
Let's get to the exotic dancer part.
Okay.
How did that happen? Right? Where I didn't see it coming.
I know, no one does. I was 41.
You were 41.
I was 41.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm 57 now. I was 41, and it does seem like a lifetime ago, by the way. Yeah. When you say that, when people are like, it'll never feel better. When I'm about to tell you the story, it feels like I'm telling you about somebody else's life that it wasn't even mine, because that's where I've gotten to.
Yeah, I get the feeling. I know that feeling, yeah.
In fact, my oldest daughter just recently said, in the worst times of our life, we thought we wouldn't get through it, and now we actually laugh about those times sometimes, like we are right now. And so I think that's really important to remember. But my car was being taken by the bank. I had the electricity turned off a couple times. My little fitness studio was struggling because it was 2008, 2009, and here in California we had a huge real estate crash, and the economy was trashed. So people weren't paying for pole dancing fitness lessons because it was too it wasn't a necessity. And as my car was being towed away, the tow driver had actually let us take all of our stuff out of it, which was great, because I'd just gotten groceries and I just didn't have the energy to park far away and hide the car another night. And that's how he caught me. And my oldest daughter, who was 13, looked at me as we were crying and said, "Do you think you could go to one of those clubs and dance so we don't lose everything?" And I was like, I really don't have the assets, and I'm older, and wouldn't that be weird for you? And she's like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, is there?
Right. That's a very creative
And I was
thinking.
like, no. She's like, and you're really good in the pole, because she'd see me play on the pole at my studio. And I was like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'll figure something out, which was my line. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. And so we went in and made dinner, and I kept thinking about it all night. So I took the last $500 I had in my checking account, and I borrowed a car from a friend, and I drove to Vegas to get a job as an exotic dancer. I didn't want to do it in LA because I was sure I'd see people I knew, and I thought that would be too horrible.
Yeah.
And so, although I still saw people I knew in Vegas, but that's a whole. And so I got there, and it turns out that to be a dancer in Vegas, you have to have a license that costs $500
You're supposed to have a license.
before you can even get a job.
Okay.
So even if you're not going to get a job, you have to pay that $500.
At
which
least you
is
have a license.
all the money I had. Yep, then you get the license. So I did that, and I slept in my car, and I went to strip club after strip club, topless, to try to get to meet with the owners. And I know this is shocking, but strip clubs really don't keep a schedule. They aren't good at showing up when they're supposed to. And so the managers kept missing me, and finally, a cab driver that I was talking to said, "I've got a place, follow me." And so I went in, and I met the woman named Barb. She was the house mom who took care of you, like she took care of all the girls. And she got me ready and said, "You have to audition. You're going to do a spin on the pole, take your shirt off. That's it."
That's the audition?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the guy in the back. I was like, okay. And before I went in, I said, I really need this job. Do you have any pointers? And she said, look him in the eye the whole time and smile. And I was like, okay.
The eye contact.
Eye contact. So I did it, and I saw him say no. And then I heard her say, well, she dances in LA, which was a lie. And he said, fine. And I got the job.
How long it last?
8 months. I quit after 8 months.
8 months of exotic dancer career.
I drive or fly back and forth.
So that helped you to get out of the...
It did, yeah. No, it helped keep us from losing our apartment and helped keep us, kind of floating above the water. It was still not a great time in the economy. So in the days before, many women could make $10,000 to $20,000 in a weekend. It wasn't like that. But, there were times I made $4,000 in a night, and that paid rent. And it did what it needed to do. It got me to the next step of that journey. I did quit because somebody bit me. It did change how I was in a lot of ways. I started becoming much more, you just feel like you have to protect yourself all the time. I got really cold with people. People kept saying I wasn't myself, and I couldn't explain how I wasn't the same person anymore. I was just kind of surviving, and then I'd come home and be like stay-at-home mom almost, and then I'd drive to Vegas, and it was lonely, and it was hard, and people are horrible to you in Vegas because we've told everyone you can do whatever you want, and no one will say anything. So after a couple of bad experiences, when the guy bit me, I walked out, and I never went back.
Did you ever feel like you want to reach out to the father of your kids just to ask for any support, help, or did you ever get to the point that you just really, I can't do it myself, I really need him to step up?
I did, many times. I even called him from the floor of Caesar's Palace in Vegas one night because I found out he was in Italy with his family. and
Oh.
I was stripping to feed our kids.
Yeah.
And my oldest daughter once called him because she asked to borrow $60 so our lights wouldn't get turned off. She was 14, and he told her to get a job that he'd been working since he was 14. So we did. We reached out many a time, and he didn't. For years, he didn't. He was like, I have nothing to give you.
It's almost like he was trying to scratch off his memory of his failure.
Yeah, I think so. I think he felt like he had given so much all those years, like working so hard for us, that he shouldn't have to, or that, he was trying to survive. It's hard for me to understand because it's so different from who I am. But I do think that was it. And, I realized I couldn't rely on him. Now, I will say that after about 3 years, he got a job again. He called me one day and was like, can I send you $200 a month? And I was like, yes, I'll take anything you can send me. And over the years, he always increased when he made money. And it's really hard when you're trying to figure out what to do. I should have probably gone to court and sued him for child support, but he had no money to take. And so also the court systems and the help for people has so much red tape around it that when I filed a complaint against him for not paying child support, it took 2 years for it to go through. And by then he had started paying a little, and I didn't have the money or energy to fight it. So over the years, he continued, as he got more successful, to pay us a little every month. And he paid us, $1,000, and he did help and tried very hard. And I didn't sue him over it or fight him more because I wanted the girls to have a relationship with him. I didn't want them to look back and be mad at me that I didn't let them know him. I felt like they would form their own opinions of who he was, but that it was important for them to have him in their life, and then it could be their choice. So very carefully, I would fly them to see his family and see him. I did everything I could to make sure they had that. Yeah.
All right. So your daughter tells you that you should try the exotic dancing career.
Crazy.
Then it lasts for 8 months.
Yeah.
And what was the point? What was the thing that caused the shift? Because I remember you described a day to me when we spoke at the makeup room. You said that it was a day when you really, really, really decided that you want to change everything.
Yeah.
And did you mention you were next to the lake?
It was in
Something?
trees, yeah. I see. Good memory.
Yeah. I'm very good at some details.
Yeah, you are very good at them. Yeah, I was in Big Sur in Northern California with my daughter. I'd been there a few times with a guy I was dating, and my youngest daughter, she would, sleep in, and I would get up really early with my coffee and sit amongst the redwoods by a creek. And I was just thinking about how miserable I was. I didn't like my job. I really wasn't making money. I was working all these crazy jobs. My oldest was about to try to go to college. I had no idea how we were going to do that. I was dating a guy that was horrible. That's probably unfair. No, you know what? He was horrible. I was dating a guy who was not who I should have been dating. Everything was just awful. And I was sitting there amongst the trees. And this is going to sound so simple, but all of a sudden I realized I could just stop doing everything I was doing and try something new and choose to be happy. I could break up with the loser guy. I could find a cheaper apartment that I could afford more reasonably now that Sawyer was leaving. I could go back to school. I could get a job. I could have the power to change my life if I wanted to. The only thing holding me back was fear. But sometimes, you're in this space where you're like, I can't leave because I'm scared. But the thing you're in isn't any good anyway. So you can change it. And so I went home from that trip, and I applied for grad school and got in. And I started looking for jobs on Craigslist at the time. And I saw this ad for a fitness person, which seemed like it was either going to be a cult or they were going to try to sell me something, but for some reason I went anyway. And it turned out to be a life-changing decision. I got a job as a trainer that turned into a facility manager, that turned into a regional manager, that gave me this corporate career that literally helped me put both my daughters through college over the next 12 years. And it all started because I realized I could just change my mind and do something different. And I stepped away from the guy and spent a lot of time working on myself and learning to love myself. That was a long process, still is, but I'm getting there. And it changed my whole life, every bit of it. It was like the trees were whispering to me while I was sitting there, like, pay attention, you can do something, you can change it. You have power over your own life.
That's beautiful. If today's version of you were able to speak to that girl that was sitting in a big stir that day, what would you tell her exactly on that day?
I would tell her she can change everything and be happy, and that someday she will be. She's just got to make herself do it. And I would tell her she's worthy of good things and love. And I would tell her one day she would be happier than she ever dreamed she could be with the people in her life and the decisions she'd made.
That's beautiful. And that's true. That probably was the identity shift. There was already this version of you stepping in.
Yeah.
And just so you know, I'm very, very proud of you.
Thank you.
And you probably haven't heard that enough in your life.
That's so sweet.
I also just figured out today, you briefly just mentioned that you were adopted.
Yeah.
And you grew up where?
In Missouri with this wonderful family. Although being adopted did lend itself to the feeling of unworthiness a little bit because someone gives you away. But I had the best family you can imagine.
Did you know straight up from the beginning?
Yeah, my mom, who wasn't progressive in most ways, but she told me that I was adopted. I got to them when I was 2 days old.
Yeah.
And she told me I was adopted from before I could speak. So I didn't know. I always knew I was adopted. They always talked about how special it was, you know. They'd waited 7 years to get a baby girl. My brother got in trouble because we lived in a small town, and he went to school and told everybody he was getting a baby sister the next day, and no one believed him because my mom wasn't pregnant. And they were like, no. And they let him stay home from school, and he sat in the window. We have pictures of it waiting for me. And I was really, really lucky. But even with that, I let my brain and stories that I wrote about my life and what must have happened with my mother make me feel like I wasn't valuable a little bit.
But I feel like your parents made you feel like it's very special. They were planning. They had intention of having a baby. So in fact, it's really special.
It's really special. And I think it's really interesting because I've learned over the years that sometimes you just have to realize that things that happen so you can be with these people, right? Like, to go back to my ex-husband, I wouldn't even date him now.
Right.
Like, and I'm not trying to be mean to him. He has not changed. He has not become a person I'd want to be with. So I'm really sorry the way it all happened and all that we went through, but I'm not sorry we're not together. Mm-hmm. And same with that. I have, in the last few years, met my half-brothers and sisters from my biological mom. She sadly died before I could meet her. But my life would not have been very good if I'd stayed with her. They really had a hard time growing up. They didn't have a family, and I did. The hard part is realizing that when you're in it, mm-hmm. and like seeing what the good thing is around it, you know?
Do you think any of this experiences affecting you today in order do you have any, something might still trigger you just because of certain experiences? Or did you already overcome everything?
Oh no, yeah, for sure. Things trigger me. But now when I have really strong feelings about something, as a rule, I think my boyfriend would agree with this. As a rule, I recognize it's a feeling probably triggered by something, and I'm able to use my words and talk about it and like try to figure out why that's happening, right? Like what it is that's making it happen, especially if the person in front of me that I'm upset with isn't really doing anything wrong. Like, what is it that's triggering me? Because for sure, abandonment and trust issues are a thing for me. I am a Scorpio, so there's that. We hold a grudge. Don't make us angry. But yes, I think that there's definitely things now. But I've done meditation, and I do a lot of spiritual work, and I do a lot of energy healing and a lot of alternative things that have helped me a lot, along with a lot of therapy. And so I've learned to just take a breath and like let those feelings come through and then look at what's happening.
And also you're giving him heads up a little bit about what's happening?
Totally. I'll be like, I am really hurt right now. I don't know. This is probably not about you. And he listens. I'll give him, he is so good about like, you can have your feelings. You can talk, and he's so kind about that it allows me to work through it, which has been incredible.
What kind of things you think you're no longer tolerating or doing, or what is no longer present in your current relationship that could have been a part of how you could maintain your relationship in the past?
Yeah, no lying ever. Just no dishonesty about anything. And sometimes that's really hard, right? To be really honest about what's happening is not always an easy thing to do. You think it is, and then you have to be, you have to really look at yourself. So definitely no lying, but also a level of respect of who I am as a person. I need autonomy. I think that's important, particularly for women. I grew up that you threw everything together and then you were this little unit, which is great as long as it doesn't go away. If it goes away, you're so screwed. Like financially, I was in such a mess. So like autonomy to be myself and have the things I have, honesty, and I think something that Ben and I have is just a really great appreciation for each other, because we've both been in relationships, like appreciating little things that we do and appreciating time together is maybe the best thing about it. And I think that's really been a guiding. I just won't put up with any I will not put up with bad behavior or rudeness or treating people poorly. That's just you aren't even going to get a date with me. So
yeah. And to any person, girl, woman, that is finding herself right now in a place where it doesn't feel like things are gonna get better, what would you tell them in order to start moving from a power place and not from survival? Because I feel like identity shift that happened to you when you decided to turn everything around is mostly just your mental decision, and it's just your actual decision to move differently, to make power moves instead of throwing a pity party, which is hard to do. Especially it's hard to zoom out when you're inside of the situation. How do you think you find this inner temple, or how did it work out for you? What would you suggest?
I think there's a few things. When things are bad, I used to say to my daughters, there are 3 kinds of people in the world when something goes wrong. The kind that curl up in a ball and hide, the kind that run away, and then there's us. We get up and we keep going forward. And sometimes that just meant paying bills or working jobs or whatever. But that was kind of the start. I didn't feel like I could give up because I had them. But I do think that it's important to get professional help. That really helped me start realizing I could have a different life. You know, if you have anxiety or depression or something, you should deal with that because it makes it much harder to have a powerful, decision-making process. And then I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I really feel like when I was in Big Sur, that's what happened. I feel like I stopped and listened, and there were lots of voices telling me I could do it. And that helped. But the big one is you just have to decide that doing something that's unknown to you or scary is better than sitting in something comfortable that's awful. Because it's easy to say in the bad thing because you know what it's going to be. There's no surprises. And doing something different is super scary. But if you don't, you never get out of that. When you're in a really bad place, ask for help and accept help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stubborn and I was like, I don't need anybody. Of course you do. We all do. Like, ask for help, accept help. Take time to be quiet. Don't use substances to numb yourself. Feel the feelings so you can get through it and get to the other side. There is no way around it. You have to go through the pain. My dad died years after my husband had left, and I realized in the middle of that grief process that I had never grieved my relationship with my ex-husband. I just stuffed it down further and further. I dated, I had fun, I was a mom, I drank. And then when my dad died, I could not run from it anymore. And the grief was just there. So feel your feelings, work your way through them. It will allow you to open up to other things, to more possibilities in a way you never thought it would before. And that's probably the best tip I can give.
Yeah, but you see, it takes for some people to actually hit the rock bottom first to get to that place. And I wish it was a shortcut to...
Me too.
But I guess it's just a journey.
It is. And I think everybody's rock bottom is different. And I think, if I could go back and change things, there are lots of things I would change about how I raised the kids or things that I chose. I sometimes chose to work instead of being home. Now I wonder if that was the right thing. All these things, right? The thing about it is, if you have to get to rock bottom, if you're that stubborn, and I'm speaking to someone very personal right now, if you have to get to rock bottom, you also have to know that when you hit it, that you've just got to be honest that you're at rock bottom. You've just got to relinquish that you're at a place you can't get any lower and stop being so prideful about it. If you're really struggling, you need to go, I need help, I think. But you're right, it is hard. It is really hard.
Yeah, it's a waste of a lot of time.
It does.
And how did you get into acting, modeling, and all this industry?
About 2 years before the pandemic, my oldest daughter, Sawyer, had been telling me I should let my hair go gray, and I told her no. And then...
Was it the same daughter that, so you said the oldest?
Yes, yeah. She thought it'd be my power move.
Yeah. But she has some good advice.
She has great advice. She is great. She is the oldest soul on earth. She has great advice. And she... I ignored her. And then a couple years before the pandemic, before everybody did it, because they had to, I was like, I'm going to cut my hair off and I'm going to strip all the color out.
Yeah.
It took 2 years to, grow out. And in the middle of that, Sawyer worked for a cosmetic company and they needed a woman with silver hair for a campaign for eyebrows. And she asked if she could submit her mom, and they said yes. And they called me in for a go-see, and they did some stuff, and then they called me back 2 weeks later, and I got a national campaign. I'm in Sephora for that company, Kosas Cosmetics for their eyebrow gel. I'd never done anything like that. I was terrified. And it was really fun. And then I started doing a little more. And then I started doing commercials. And then one day, a couple years ago, I finally allowed myself to do something where I spoke, like a dramatic thing. And I just fell in love with it. It was so fun and exciting. It's different every day. And that's how I started doing it. It's all because of Sawyer.
What do you think is the main scar that you still carry from all the challenges, let's call them this way, until this day?
It's funny, as you said that, my heart hurt.
Like physically?
Yeah, like I can physically feel it hurt when I'm sad or I think about it. I think probably the biggest scar is honestly regret. Heartbreak is hurtful, and being cheated on or finding out someone you love doesn't love you, it's incredibly painful. But sometimes I made decisions because I was doing my very best, but I wish I could go back and change so that maybe I would have done a better job raising my girls. Not that I think I did a terrible job, but just you make decisions, you don't know what you're doing, you're in the middle of a thing. And so I think I have regrets, and my heart hurts, and the scar that's there is that I never planned for this to be the life for my kids. I never planned for us to be broke, or for the dad not to be around, or for them to have to be scared about the lights turning out, or for their mom not to be home because she was either working or maybe decided she needed to go out with somebody. That's the scar. I wish I could take all that away from him.
So there is still things that you wish you've done differently?
Sure, yeah.
Because I remember you've said that you're really happy with how everything came out, and you don't regret about doing all the things possible back then, and maybe it was just the only way for you to actually get to the point.
No, you're right. I don't regret, what's the right way to say it? I don't regret what I did and how I don't regret what I did. Sometimes I regret how I did it. You look back and you're like, I wish I had done it this way.
Sometimes you regret how you did it, how exactly you did it.
Yeah. Like, I dated when maybe I should have been home. By the way, if you have kids, this is just a normal thing. I think that you never think you did it right. I think that's just part of it. I really like who I've become, but I've also worked really hard at understanding things and growing differently and listening to my children and taking accountability for actions I may have taken that at the time seemed like all I could do but still hurt my kids. I think because of all of that, the growth, the work, the always being open to listening to them, their pain, and even if I didn't mean to, my responsibility with it, I think that is why I'm at peace with where I'm at, but I had to do that piece to get there.
What do you think your kids would say about you as a mom? They definitely are happy daughters.
They are. I mean, they would say, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you said you said you guys have podcasts. You said you speak to your daughters about stuff that moms usually don't speak to their daughters about, and so it seems like you're doing more than fine.
Yeah,
as a mom.
We are.
Today.
We are. No, we are. They are. They tell you how much they love me and that I'm super strong and that they could always count on me, and that and we're friends and we love each other and that I give great advice. All that's true. No, it's absolutely true. I think I'm just hard on myself.
Maybe you lost a best friend, but you got two more best friends.
Yes, they are the most amazing. Yeah. I never knew that you could. I really wasn't somebody growing up thinking I would have children, and I never knew how much I could love something or someone. And I do think that that's one of the reasons I'm doing so well now is they hold me really accountable. They are not easy on me at all. They expect me to be the best and to do my best and to work at it. And I appreciate that. It's really helped me become who I am. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. It was really, really fun and emotional
Thank you.
to speak to you. And do you want to say anything to your daughters in case they watch?
Well, to Sawyer, I always want to say how much I love you and how much I appreciate what you had to step up and be like a parent and help me when I wish you hadn't. And also, you're freaking incredible. And to Lily, I want you to remember that you are my daughter and you are smart and funny and too stubborn for your own good. And I love you more than anything.
It might be a little bit too much, but what would you say to your ex-husband?
I'm really sad for you. I'm really sad that you missed the best things in life that you ever did, that you missed so much time and years, and that you don't have a relationship. And I feel sorry for you.
If there is anything you would want to say to Ben?
Oh, wow. Thank you for making me believe I could love somebody again.
On this happy end, on this great note, I just want to say it was really, really, really fun to speak to you. And thank you for your story. Thank you for sharing it openly. And just great to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.